KSLNews.com/ad-free to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Mom, meet Sarah.
From first-time Nana moments.
Yeah, welcome to Flight 101.
To annual girls trip moments. Your can't-miss moments are worth protecting against RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV. And there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com.
So where should we go next?
Sponsored by Pfizer.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Still a good-looking drive on the Valley freeways. I've seen traffic moving through Ogden Canyon. SR 39 looks to be open once again, and we still have center lanes blocked in Roy, 3500 west, 5600 south. Common Spirit, hospitals, clinics, and caregivers, all connected to advanced health care in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
A cool 68 degrees for our high today, and we'll have more smoke rolling in this afternoon from some Oregon and Washington wildfires. But as we move into the weekend, temperatures will get back into the 80s, and the smoke should ease a bit. Right now it's 66 degrees and sunny. I'm Britt Johnson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we continue to move away from the big debate on Tuesday night between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, I think the analysis has gone from everything that was present in the conversation, including cats and pets and love letters to dictators and size of crowds and who stayed to the end. But there were some things that were noticeably absent and not present during the debate. And they might actually be the things that we got to think again about. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, a lot of analysis has gone on about the moderators, about the candidates, about the commentary after, about the commentary about the commentary, who liked it, who didn't, what happened, and what comes next. But of all the things that we saw that were present, and there were a lot of things to comment about that, there was one thing that was noticeably absent. Our good friend at the Deseret News, Jay Evenson, talked about one of those things that was missing. He chimed in and was in perfect harmony with our friend George Will from the Washington Post, talking about the one thing that got no time and no presence on the debate Tuesday, and that's the national debt. Jay, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Boyd. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you know what? I have got this fantasy, and it is that you start a debate and one of the candidates says, look, folks, we are in serious financial trouble. We need to cut programs, and we need to cut them deeply. We do need to raise some taxes, and we're going to try to do that judiciously so we don't affect prosperity. But we can't afford anything new, and we can't afford a lot of what we're already doing. And if we don't do something now, our economy will be in ruins in 20 years or so. Please vote for me. I don't know if they would get a single vote, but that is exactly what we need to be hearing.
Yeah, it is the old, it is awfully hard to sell broccoli when everyone's giving away cotton candy. But the reality is that the math always wins. The math always wins. And I noted earlier today, Jay, I was going back through some files this morning, and I actually found a piece that I wrote back in 2017. And I was worried that the debt at that point was just a paltry $20 trillion. We're now at well over 35 and marching our way to 40. So we've almost doubled the size of our national debt in just 7 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I talk in my column here about a Reuters report. They had economists from 4 different organizations, the Penn Wharton Budget Model, Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, the Tax Foundation, and Oxford Economics. And they each went through the promises that are being made by Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and calculated how much that would add to our national debt. And it's astounding. And we're not going backwards by any measure. We're going forward. And we're talking trillions of new dollars in debt over the next 10 years. And we simply can't, the Congressional Budget Office already assumes that if we do nothing, if there are no promises from anyone, we will have a national debt that jumps by $22 trillion more above its current $35 trillion level by 2034. And yet we just keep adding and adding and adding to it.
Yeah, no one is serious, and everyone seems to be unserious. Interesting that today the Congressional Budget Office, and for our listeners, that the Congressional Budget Office is a nonpartisan. They're just there to call balls and strikes and to force Congress and the executive branch to show their math, to show the work that they're actually doing. And they projected that by the end of September, which also has this little thing about funding the government on it, but at the end of this fiscal year, even though the federal government will take in over $4 trillion in tax revenue, they will spend $6 trillion. So we will have an additional $2 trillion in deficit spending in a single calendar year.
Yeah. You stop and think about how cynical our political system is, that it just assumes that the American people can't understand this and won't accept it. What we want is for our government to keep spending more and more on different things. I kind of had to chuckle because this Reuters report said the economists can't really keep up with all the promises. So they don't know if this projection that they gave is correct. No one had heard of Kamala Harris's $50,000 for startup businesses until the other night. And so they haven't baked that into their projections. But we just keep adding and adding to the promises, assuming that that's what the American people want. That's not what I'm hearing from people I talk to every day.
Yeah, it seems to me that people are getting to that phase to start to recognize it. This is not just a spending problem, but this is a national security problem. In the end, I know that's something that you've looked at over the years in terms of what does this actually mean for us internationally, and what does it mean for our national security if we just continue to rack up this debt. We know that just the interest payment on the debt is already greater than what we spend on defense in this country, and will soon be $1 trillion a year just in interest payment, which, of course, doesn't buy anybody any health care or any social service programs or build any tanks or hospitals or schools or railroads or anything else. It's just interest. And to me, that math will win in the end and ultimately create that national security problem.
The dollar is the world's reserve currency. And that alone gives us a great deal of influence around the world. We ought to be protecting that with everything that we have. And the Penn Wharton budget model last year went through this and predicted that we only have about 20 years left at current spending levels until what they said was that no amount of tax increases or spending cuts will be able to save us when we get to this point where investors lose faith in our country's ability to pay its debts. And as you talked about, the interest payments, when that reaches a point where we really can't service that interest anymore, then we're in big trouble. Then you have no choice but to inflate the dollar and to get into this downward spiral that leads to unemployment and inflation and all kinds of terrible things.
Yeah. Really, at that point, the only options are to either just print a whole bunch of money, and we've seen what that does inflation-wise and what that does, or as you mentioned, the draconian cuts. And in either of those scenarios, the people who will be hurt the most are going to be the poor and the most vulnerable among our citizens.
Yes.
And to me, that's where we really got to have an accountability moment to say, hey, we've simply got to do this different.
And we've talked about this before, you and I, but it's really hard to get this message across when the sun is shining. It's 69 degrees outside and everyone's feeling great. And, the budget indicators or the economic indicators are all pretty darn good. And unemployment's low. We're getting inflation back down under control. We're sailing smoothly, but we can't quite yet hear the waterfalls up ahead, but they are definitely up there. And we know they are. And we need to do something now when it's a lot easier than 10, 20 years from now when we're facing imminent ruin.
Yeah. Jay Evenson, opinion editor at the Deseret News. Always great perspective, and thanks for commiserating with me just a little bit today. Jay, always appreciate your perspective. And this is one of those that is a leadership issue. Jay framed it absolutely perfectly, that when the sun's shining and it's nice outside, there's a gentle breeze, everything's great. And often we talk about that in the context of when that sun is out and the breeze is light and the sea is calm, every boat in the harbor has a great captain. But when the wind starts howling and the waves start raging, that's when you find out if you have a captain. And what the test needs to be in our country is, do we have any captains? Do we have anyone who's willing to say the hard things, and more importantly, not just say the hard things, do the hard things when it comes to Congress? We have 10 working days for Congress to fund the government, and they will overspend, again, money that we don't have on programs we can't afford, and things that will not only hurt us, but are going to cripple our children and our grandchildren's economy. And they'll be the ones that pay the price for all of this. So the question of the day, and the thing to think again about, is who will lead? Is there any leader out there who will seriously not just talk about this as a campaign issue, but do something about this when they actually govern? Because both Democrats and Republicans do like to talk about cutting spending when they're out of power. But when they're in power, it's a kid in the candy store, and they don't have restraint. So can we not just talk about it? Can we find leaders that will actually do something about it? Think again. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Pumpkin spice, anyone? Autumn can mean tasty lattes, sure, but also BYU football, colder weather, and how about a little presidential election?
Rock the vote!
For all the spice you need this fall. Start with Tim and Amanda, mornings from 5 to 9. Then David DeGenovic, Boyd Matheson, and Jeff Kaplan's afternoon news as you drive home. Coming this fall on KSL News Radio.
Introducing Peach Doors and Windows. Are you ready to upgrade your home with stunning new windows but are overwhelmed with how to begin? Look no further than Peach Windows. You know at Peach, they are all about giving you options. Peach offers a wide selection of wood windows, sleek modern black metal frames, European tilt and turn windows, plus much, much more. It's not just about looks, it's about durability and security to protect what matters most. Let them help you find the perfect match for your home, budget, and personal style. Visit their showroom and see for yourself. No pushy sales tactics, only guidance from their experienced staff. No inflated markups just to offer so-called discounts. See their 5-star reviews where customers rate them on their attention to detail through every step of the sale and installation process. Amazing home transformations begin with windows and doors. Serving Logan to St. George, just Google Peach Building to see for yourself.
Gear up for your hunting season with the Shields Hunting Sale event going on now through September 15th. Take advantage of great deals, like getting a free blind bag and gun case with the purchase of a Benelli Super Black Eagle, 40% off the First Light Cypher collection, $100 off Lacrosse Optifade Alpha Evolution boots, and discover so many more in-store and online. Fill your bag to the limit on savings this hunting season, now through September 15th at Shields or Shields.com.
This year, head to Abravanel Hall for an elevated movie night. Experience your favorite films in concert with action-packed blockbusters, cinematic classics, and animated masterpieces playing on the big screen while the Utah Symphony plays the iconic movie scores live. Grab your tickets now and see the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park or relive the spellbinding magic of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. More at utahsymphony.org/films.
Before you take another injection or another weight loss pill, can you listen for just a second? We just want to talk to you about soda weight loss because I was with you. I was so frustrated. I thought, I want to lose this weight and lose this weight fast. I don't want to live one more day like this. But then I realized, but I want to be healthy for the rest of my life, not just for the next year or two while I'm taking these pills. With Soda Weight Loss, I lost 34 pounds in less than 3 months. It's really sustainable, which is what Tyler says.
I would recommend soda because it's sustainable. This is lifetime change. I would recommend soda because it works.
And look, most people, if they go the injection route or the pill route, end up gaining that weight and some on the other side of it. That's not going to happen with Soda Weight Loss because they change the way you look at food. You're going to keep that weight off, and isn't that your real goal? Find out more. Go to sodaweightloss.com. It's spelled SOTA, and it stands for State of the
Art.
Hello?
Hey, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. Did you know we've got you fully covered?
I've taken up beekeeping. I'm always covered.
I'm talking the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage at up to half the cost.
Same honey, half the work?
Exactly.
Sweet.
Just call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Britt Johnson. First, Salt Lake City leaders are going to take questions tonight about what's going to happen to the Smiths ballpark. Second, as government spending expires at the end of the month, the White House continues to call for House Republicans just to put up a straight funding bill to get past that deadline. Third, 6 people suspected of robbing a Taylorsville ATM while it was under repair have been arrested in southern Utah. Right now it's 66 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, it's not news to those of you who regularly listen to this program, but I truly believe that as a nation we are not nearly as divided as we think, or as many would like us to think we are. The message of division and extremism is often pushed on social media. It is propounded by political parties who profit from the division, using wedge issues and fundraising as a way to do that. But we need to look at things differently. And we have another new approach to look at it and how we actually come to recognize across our differences what we actually have in common, but more importantly, how we actually move forward. And there's some very simple processes and strategies and principles that are crucial to all of this. Professor Jamil Zaki is a professor of psychology at Stanford University. He's also the author of a book you need to check out called Hope for Cynics: The Surprising Science of Human Goodness. I love that. And Professor, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive into this. We tend to find that most people think we're far more divided than we actually are. You've been looking at this in a really interesting way as it relates to cognitive behavior therapy. Kind of break us down in terms of what you've been looking at and what you found.
Yeah, well, it's no secret that we are politically divided in this country, and I think we are, in reality, more divided in some ways ideologically than we have been in the past decades. That said, the divisions in our head are much bigger. So there's a bunch of research from the behavioral sciences that finds that if you ask the average person, Democrat or Republican, what the average person they disagree with is like, they have no idea. They think that the average person they disagree with is far more extreme than they really are. They think that that average person is twice as anti-democratic, twice as hateful, and 4 times as violent as they really are. And those distortions in our minds get in the way of finding common ground and moving forward together, in the same way that in depression we have distortions about what we're like and what the world is like that stop us from getting better.
Yeah, I love the example you had. You had a fantastic piece in the Washington Post today. You can check that out at thewashingtonpost.com. That you said that even when our pessimism is misplaced, it creates that cycle of silence and misunderstanding that actually makes things worse. And you compared it to depression. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, well, in depression, a person will come to a bleak conclusion. They'll say, I'm worthless, or nobody likes me. And they're wrong, but that conclusion will drive them, for instance, to avoid other people and become lonelier. So it sort of becomes this toxic, self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, in politics, we do the same thing. In my lab, we found that when people, for instance, believe that folks on the other side don't support democracy, they themselves say, well, I can't support democracy either. I have to follow anti-democratic practices because it's sort of like an arms race. If the other side is going to attack, I better defend myself right away.
Escalation upon escalation, I think, is how that actually plays out. One of the things I love you do in your lab, and again, this was pointed out in your piece today, is really kind of a form of cognitive exposure therapy, that when you actually expose people to the reality, they can actually make some rational decisions in terms of change.
You're very wise to use this term exposure therapy, right? That's when you basically show somebody something that they're scared of, and they learn through experience that it's actually not that frightening, that they can be in front of a spider and not die, for instance. Well, you can be in front of somebody you disagree with, and you also won't die. So we find that we can present people this information in two ways. One, you just show them the data. So in our lab, when we show people data that the other side actually deeply supports democracy, they are more accurate about the other side, and they're less supportive of anti-democratic practices themselves. In essence, they feel safer moving back to our core shared values of a democratic nation. And you can also expose people to each other through conversation, having them actually get together. And when you do that, they learn that the average person on the other side is nothing like what they fear or imagine.
Yeah. I want to spend just a minute getting into to your book, Hope for Cynics. I want to have you come back and do a deep dive on this. But I love the subtitle, this Science of Human Goodness. We've been talking about the economics of goodness and the power that is when a community doesn't have to spend money on addiction or homelessness, that economic goodness, that economics of goodness has a real power. But give us a little bit about the science of human goodness that you've been looking at.
Well, I think that the part that is most important to me is that it's surprising. So, look, science is never going to tell us whether people in general are kind or cruel, compassionate or callous, good or bad. Those are questions for philosophers and theologians. But it turns out that study after study finds that people are better than we think. So research finds that we underestimate how trustworthy, open-minded, generous, and friendly other people are. And we've been talking about how that gets in the way of political discourse, but it gets in the way of all of our social lives. Yeah. People are lonelier than they need to be because they don't realize how kind the folks around them are. And we find over and over again that the best way to build hope in people is not to lie to them, but to tell them the truth, to give them, again, chances to witness each other's goodness.
Oh, I love that. Hope coming through the truth. We've talked about it in the in the context of both the pessimist and the optimist are irrational, but hope is a virtue that can be developed. And you said by exposing people to the truth, that's the beginning of that, the surprise to all of that. Professor Jamil Zaki, so grateful to have you on the program from Stanford University, author of Hope for Cynics, The Surprising Science of Human Goodness. And Professor, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back and doing an even deeper dive, because this is a crucial conversation.
I'd love that. Your insights on this are so on point. You could have been a co-author on this book.
We'll take you up on the sequel. How's that?
That sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Professor. We will talk to you very soon. Great stuff. And again, you can also check out his opinion column at the Washington Post, How the Psychology of Political Division Could Lead Us Out of It. I love that perspective of it. And Professor Zaki, again, from Stanford University, exposure therapy, I think, is kind of the answer to all of this. You've heard us talk about that, of course, with our good friend Jenny Howe, talking about our teens and dealing with anxiety and depression and those kinds of things, angst. By having that exposure and building up that confidence and recognizing the reality. I love the way the professor talked about truth. Exposing people to the truth actually leads to hope. Hope is a virtue. So we can develop that. And it is the pessimist and the cynic and the optimist even that are irrational But there is this cause in this case to get to hope. And when it comes to many of the things that we look at as divisive and divisions in our country, if we just expose ourselves a little bit more to those that we disagree with, if we can be willing to be radically curious, that we can radically listen, and that we can even do that radical thing of admitting that we're wrong, or, wow, I had never thought of it that way before, that's a good day. And it leads us to better places and spaces where we can actually come together to solve the problem, not just talk about them, not just yell about whose fault it is, but actually come to the solutions that'll move us all forward in a significant way. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Britt Johnson. KSL's top story this hour: 6 people suspected of robbing a Taylorsville ATM while it was under repair have been arrested in southern Utah. 2 men wearing hoodies and masks confronted the technician at the Mountain America Credit Union ATM, pushed him aside, and stole $200,000. The getaway car was later tracked by GPS to Payson, where the cash was still found inside. All 6 suspects were booked into Iron County Jail while authorities investigate. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. In another potential blow to Boeing, tens of thousands of its workers are on the verge of walking off the job if they vote to strike. Workers on the airplane factory floor would strike. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
Boeing and the union representing machinists who build commercial airplanes have a tentative deal, but the workers in that union don't like the deal and appear ready to reject it and walk out on strike Friday morning. Steve is a Boeing factory worker.
It's not a good offer. I'll be voting to reject the contract.
Boeing is offering a 25% pay raise over several years. Workers want 40% and they want their pensions back. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Your money at this moment: the Dow up 185 points. The S&P has gained 40 points. And the NASDAQ is up 179 points. Coming up, more smoky air is moving in. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
When might you be buzzed? When you suddenly love everything.
You guys, I love this song. I love these nachos. I love our kickball league. Ugh! I love this guy. What's your name? You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love your car. Is this real leather?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I have a serious heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM. Some symptoms include being short of breath, feeling tired, or having dizziness or chest pain. I still had symptoms on my beta blocker, so I asked my cardiologist about any treatment advances. It was a breakthrough for me. That's why I'm working with Bristol Myers Squibb to raise awareness about HCM and to help others like me. Talk to your cardiologist today and visit hcmrealtalk.com for more information.
Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb.
We have some exciting news to announce.
Master Electrical Service has joined Mountain Home Services.
And I can speak from experience, Deb. Mountain Home Services installed my furnace years ago, and it's been amazing.
And we know Master Electrical Service has been your trusted source for all your electrical needs, like your EV chargers, your generators, and recessed lighting.
But now that they've joined Mountain Home Services, they can help you with your HVAC, you know, your heating and air, as well as your plumbing.
And it comes with that upfront pricing guarantee. I love the upfront pricing guarantee because it means no hidden fees.
100% satisfaction guarantee as well.
Master Electrical Service has been the name you trust since 1954.
They're the company we trust, and so can you.
Check them out now at mountainhomeutah.com.
That's mountainhomeutah.com, or give them a call at 801-543-2222. So easy to remember, 801-543-2222.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Looking good on the Valley freeways. We still have lanes blocked in the center lanes in Roy, 3500 West, 5600 South, and Salt Lake City PD wrapping up an accident at 5th South, about 1400 East. Murdoch Hyundai is celebrating 3 brand new dealerships with 1.99% for 5 years on the Tucson or Elantra. Murdoch Hyundai in Logan, Linden, and Murray. MurdochHyundai.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It looks like more smoky air will be moving in this afternoon, and it's a cool fall day. We're almost at our high for today, which is 68 degrees. Right now it's 67 degrees and sunny. I'm Britt Johnson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings, or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. The Biden administration's recent $10 million grant to the AIDS Healthcare Foundation for tenant advocacy raised a few eyebrows in the housing sector. And we're going to explore both what that means and why giving away large gobs of money that way tends to be problematic rather than effective. But we also want to extend it beyond that in terms of what this actually does to housing in general. But we want to start with this particular $10 million grant to a nonprofit. Again, cause is good in terms of let's make sure that people have good, safe living conditions, that there's good rights there for tenants, and all of that sounds good and great. And then you have to watch what happens on the back end. Christian Bridgesky, of course, is a reporter at Reason, has a great piece on this at reason.com today, talking about this $10 million grant and ultimately who it was given to and what the results might be telling us. Christian, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was saying, dive right in. Give us kind of the backstory in terms of how did we get to this and where in the heck are we now?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So this grant program, it's a new, pretty small grant program in the scheme of, federal government spending, but it's $10 million that's ultimately supposed to go to tenant groups at housing that's been subsidized by the federal government, basically, and to, give them money and resources to help organize for better living conditions, to hold their landlords accountable for fixing up the place, keeping, apartments habitable, what have you. What's interesting about who this grant went to is it went to an intermediary nonprofit who will then distribute the money to these tenants that are two intermediary nonprofits, one of whom is this group called the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which, their primary business is running discount pharmacies for AIDS patients, but they also happen to own SROs, residential hotels, basically incredibly low-cost hotels for formerly homeless, very low-income people in Los Angeles on Skid Row. And the hotels that this nonprofit owns have been the subject of repeated lawsuits, media investigations, complaints from tenants, complaints from employees that they're, uninhabitable, they're inhumane, it's slum housing. There's reports of, water outages for, weeks at a time, tenants being forced to, defecate in their trash cans because they have they haven't had water or, access to a toilet for weeks, elevators being out for weeks or months at a time. So, disabled tenants aren't able to leave their upper floor homes, just a huge litany of issues. And this is now the nonprofit that's going to get, distribute money to tenant groups to go argue to other landlords that they should, maintain their buildings in a better condition. So this is who, I got a statement from HUD saying this was the most qualified applicant to do this kind of work.
Yeah, and so as we unpack that a little bit, I was reading your piece this morning and just thought, holy cow, how does this happen? As you said, in the grand scheme of things, $10 million is not everything. I mean, you used to buy a lot.
Yeah, sure.
But now it sort of seems to be the drop in the bucket. But $10 million is $10 million. But it's supposed to be about creating better living conditions for people in this kind of housing. And suddenly you've got a group that has been kind of the target of repeated offenses over and over of inhumane slum housing. How does that happen? And then how do we change the dynamic on that in terms of some accountability into that process?
So I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure why HUD made this decision. Again, this is, I believe, the first tranche of money that has ever gone out from this program, and they only gave one award, which was split between the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and another Massachusetts group to hand out these grants. I asked HUD why they gave money to this group, and they didn't give me any specifics. I'd likely be following up with some records requests, but no, the decision is baffling, and we don't know the particulars of how that's happened. So
yeah, you noted in your piece the emailed statement from HUD was that they're eligible and that they were the best qualified applicant. Were they the only applicant?
I think it's possible. Again, I don't know for sure, but it is interesting that there was, they were giving out one grant award for this, and it seems to be a discretionary grant program where they can more or less set the criteria and decide who gets it. So maybe it was just a case of few applicants, but nevertheless, this is, eyebrow raising in the extreme. So.
Yeah, and we'll let that all play out, but it does feel a little crony capitalism there in terms of how that goes, or how that could pass muster, I guess, is the real eye-raising question for me. Let's broaden this a little bit if we can, Christian, because you have such great insight on all of this. We've been talking a lot about housing and all of that here in the state of Utah. We had a big gubernatorial debate last night, and of course that was a hot topic as those costs continue to go up. Give us some perspective in terms of something like this is a very small example, but isn't it just one more example of where trying to have a big government solve a problem like that is more likely to lead to things that may not necessarily produce the right result?
Yeah, sure. So, in the debate on Tuesday, you had Vice President Kamala Harris mention her plan to give first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment subsidy. You can imagine under normal market conditions, maybe you give people more money to buy something, they'll be able to afford more of it. Producers will rush to make it for them. But with something like housing, where there's just a litany of restrictions and frictions on building new homes, the primary result that you can expect is that by subsidizing people's demand for buying housing, you're ultimately just going to raise the price, right? So giving someone a $25,000 down payment subsidy is really just you're not giving the home buyer the subsidy. Instead, you're giving it to the home seller, who can now charge a higher price because there's a lot more cash sloshing around in a market that already has a lot of constraints on adding new supply.
Yeah, great perspective as always. Christian Britschke, reporter at Reason. You can check out his piece today at reason.com. And Christian, we always appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, again, that's Christian Britschke joining us from Reason. And just a real head scratcher there. And I think it just extends into so many things. Here you had a specific $10 million grant that was supposed to be for tenant advocacy. Again, helping those living under those substandard living conditions to have a voice, to be able to do some of those kinds of things. And suddenly it was given to a group that has clearly been doing all of those things in terms of really poor, inhumane, slum kind of housing. And now they've got $10 more million to do it with. doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it also raises a lot of questions in terms of what are we doing as it relates to housing of all kinds, whether that's tenants and rent or whether that's first-time home buyers. And is the answer going to come from government? How is that going to play out? It played out interestingly last night in the gubernatorial debate as well. And it's one that I don't think we really have a good handle on just yet, because there are so many things, as Christian rightly pointed out, so many things that get in the way, including zoning, including the red tape, including all of the restrictions and regulations and things that impact the supply chain. And then if we're just dumping cash into the market on top of it from the federal government, that's not going to help the home buyers. But as Christian pointed out, it will help the home sellers because they'll know there's more cash out there, so they can charge a little bit more. So you got to really figure out what's the desired result, and then are the actions we're going to take going to help that, or will it actually hurt it in the end? All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. Did you know that we offer 3 distinct styles of gutter protection? Each one meant to handle a specific leaf problem. You might not even know there are different styles of gutter protection, but there are. And if you pick the wrong one, it could be a huge waste of money. Now, the big gutter guard companies won't tell you this. They try to sell you a one-size-fits-all gutter guard. And it could be completely wrong for the amount and types of trees and leaves you have. Not RGS Exteriors. We understand which kind of leaf problem needs which kind of gutter guard. We'll do an in-depth evaluation to assess the types, locations, and numbers of trees in your yard. Based on that data, we match your home to the right gutter guard. So don't risk wasting money on the wrong gutter protection. For a free evaluation and estimate, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Bet you never thought about this before. Do you think you could survive as a family living month to month at poverty level? Well, could you? Community Action Services and Food Bank Circles Initiative presents the No Poverty Summit, September 19th from 9 to 4 at the Provo City Library. Participate in an immersive poverty simulation and discover how much it can change the way you think about poverty. You'll also hear from First Lady Abby Cox, former Utah State Senate President Wayne Niederhauser, Utah State House Representative Marcia Judkins, and Joanne Goldblum, author of Broken America and the founder of the National Diaper Bank Network and the Alliance for Period Supplies, about how we can create better opportunities for people to obtain financial stability. Tickets are $15 and are available at casfb.org. Community Action Services and Food Bank Circles Initiative actively assists those who need support to rebuild and transform their lives. Get tickets to the No Poverty Summit, September 19th, and learn more at casfb.org.
Discover the best of senior living at Trio Orem and Trio South Ogden. Today's older adults aren't wrapping up their life's journey, they're seeking a new one. And Trio Independent Living is here to help them do just that. With a smart, modern, and connected lifestyle, residents cultivate relationships and maximize independence through signature programs like Prime Fit Wellness that bring living well and well-being to life. Welcome to the new age of senior living. Schedule your visit at leisurecare.com/Utah today.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
At the UPS Store, we understand the importance of a first impression. That's why we're here to help you put your best foot forward and be unstoppable with our printing services. With high-quality paper stock options, banners, business cards, menus, and more, we make sure your small business stands out and your message reaches the masses. After all, we're the one-stop prints that pop store. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today and get your print on.
Nearly 70% of Utah's land is controlled by the federal government, severely limiting Utah's ability to actively manage and protect our natural resources. Our families, businesses, and communities know there's a better way. Utahns have been good stewards of our public lands for generations. That's why we're asking each and every Utahn to get informed, speak up, and learn more at standforourland.utah.gov.
Boyd Matheson. Listening to Inside Sources is a little different from just reading the headlines because we're always going to get you into that think again moment. We have experts from around the country, across the world, and right here local to home that'll help us dive in and get past just the hype, the fluff, the fake fights, and the false choice so we can get into the news to help you connect the dots
with the
and make
three
the
things
news
you
make
need to know.
sense.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Britt Johnson. First, 6 people suspected of robbing a Taylorsville ATM while it was under repair have been arrested in southern Utah. Second, tens of thousands of Boeing workers are on the verge of walking off the job if they vote to strike. Third, Justin Young, suspected of breaking into multiple Salt Lake City apartments, has been booked into jail on charges of aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and robbery. Right now it's 67 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
We are staying with some fabulous conversations, crucial conversations in this first hour of the show. And I want to go to one now that in the shadow of a generational crisis, America has grappled with a pervasive sense of fear that's really started to shape and galvanize around our national psyche. From the aftermath of 9/11 that we honored yesterday to the Great Recession, COVID pandemic, all the polarization that's going on in our politics today, society has faced challenges that have tested not only our resiliency, but maybe more importantly, our unity. But as we look at that, the way to actually overcome our fear is not through a government program or government action. It's actually through you and me and all of us in community and in the public being involved in the process of the solution and moving it forward. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program today Dan Vallone, Army veteran, founding principal at Polarization Risk Advisory, where he helps institutions navigate risks from polarization. Has a great piece in the Dispatch talking about how fear trampled our response to generational crises. And Dan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Boyd. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I love this whole premise. So just kind of walk us through kind of where we've been. Obviously, we reflected on 9/11 yesterday, and obviously that was a moment of great fear, unprecedented fear, or unique fear anyway, that it was right on our own home soil. It did change a lot in terms of fear, but kind of walk us through where we've been and why we've got to think again about what we think we know when it comes to fear.
I appreciate that, Boyd. And the reason I published this piece on 9/11 is, for me, that really is such a central part of this origin story of our nation's kind of broader fight with fear. And for me, it's deeply personal. I first visited West Point about a month after 9/11 and ultimately was able to attend West Point, serve in the Army, for which I'm incredibly grateful. And the experience at West Point that I will always carry with me from 2001 is the sense I had that all these cadets, whatever was going to come, and we didn't know it at the time, they were going to be in it together. They were going to face it together, fight it together. The ups and downs, they'd bear them together. And that sense of solidarity has been noticeably and kind of tragically absent from how our nation responded to 9/11, to the Great Recession in 2008, and the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that's a underappreciated factor in why there's such pervasive polarization and distrust, and why it feels at times that we are losing confidence in our own capacity as Americans to solve problems together and make progress.
Yeah, I think that's the real thing, the lack of confidence. We have cast our confidence away, so to speak, in a lot of ways. And you get to this in your piece that I think is so important, and that is we tend to lose confidence when we feel like our involvement or what we have to contribute is not necessary or valued.
That's absolutely right. And I think, on the one hand, it's understandable that when a crisis hits, our leaders, and even sometimes as individuals, we immediately want to get back to normal. That seems so elusive and desirable, is to get back to normal. But when the crisis is so profound, and we're talking about these rare generational events, a deeper part of us knows that normal, we can't go back to normal. It's gone. We have a new normal we have to build together. And more than anything, we want to be part of building that. We want to put on a uniform with other Americans and build this new normal. Bear whatever setbacks we're going to bear, but feel necessary in that fight to secure something better out of tragedy. And unfortunately, in these three crises, our responses too often had a small, narrow set of professionals, whether that's the military, national security with 9/11, or the medical professionals in the COVID-19 pandemic, carry much of the fight. And for most Americans, it was a story of almost being a bystander, of watching other people try to build something, knowing that you were dependent on what they built. And that allows fear to settle in, even when we build a vaccine or we, reduce the capabilities of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to think about that. Unpack that just a little bit more for us. You pointed this out in your piece as well, is that the government has a role to play. You have those specialists, whether they're in the Army, whether they're the scientists and healthcare professionals. But if we don't have the citizen engagement, then that fear tends to get perpetuated or exacerbated. But it also tends to cause us to hunker down and kind of separate from one another in terms of community.
It really does. So when someone feels like you have responsibility for part of a fight, the more you lean in, the more that you work with other people, the more you feel, again, responsible for building something, you're more able to reach out and engage with people, particularly people who might be different from you in terms of viewpoints or background or perspective or whatever the case might be. But when you're not part of the fight, when you're observing it, or when you know that somebody else is carrying on most of it, and you're afraid, because these were all crises. There was a genuine source of kind of physical, personal, financial fear. You hunker down. You seek out people who are most similar to you, maybe, because that's where you kind of instinctively and biologically is where we feel most secure. Or in many cases, you isolate yourself. And I think that part of this story of failing fear is also evident in the kind of stark extent to which Americans feel isolated and lonely. Yeah. And so that's the response when you're not an agent and part of the solution, is these very adverse developments, both individually and as a society. And that confidence needs to get built by doing things, by responding to a crisis, even if you don't have the expertise, even if you don't have specialized knowledge. Each of us has more capacity than we tend to believe to respond and to do good when asked.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And it's not just doing things is a big piece of it. Doing things together is like a multiplier effect on that as well, as we come together in community. This is fantastic perspective. You can check out this piece at the Dispatch. It's always where you should start your day, thedispatch.com. And this is a fantastic piece. Dan Vallone, Army veteran, founding principal at Polarization Risk Advisory. He helps institutions navigate risk from polarization. I don't know that there's any more important work that we need to do individually as organizations of all kind, from businesses to nonprofits to government and beyond. We've got to navigate the polarization, and the way to do that is to overcome fear by acting together. Dan, thank you for your service. Thank you for a fantastic piece, and we look forward to having you back on the show to continue the conversation.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Boyd. Really appreciated this.
All right. Again, that's Dan Vallone joining us. And this is important work. This is really important work. I think we have looked at fear, and we've kind of hunkered down, and we've sort of turned it over to the experts. I hadn't really thought of it. This is one of those, I hadn't thought of it quite this way before. The fact that after 9/11, we kind of turned it over to the military to go after Al-Qaeda, to go after those things. And so it was kind of somebody else's job. We had our moment of unity immediately after. We felt that. But then there was less for us to do. And so we quickly retreated, became isolated. During the pandemic, we turned it all over to HHS and some scientists. to figure it out, and we were kind of on the sidelines watching in fear and wondering because we weren't doing anything. We hadn't been called to anything. And if there's one thing that I think we all should be watching for and expecting out of those who are seeking office, whether that's local government, state government, federal government, or the highest office in the land, are we looking at people who are creating more fear by dividing us further and causing us to be more fearful? Or are they calling us to come together to do something, to take action, to be part of the solution? Those are the leaders that we need, and those are the leaders that we need to be if we want to overcome fear and have confidence in the future of the country. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. We got a big hour number 2 coming right back at you. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Britt Johnson. KSL's top story this hour, a Utah district judge has declared Amendment D, the recent constitutional amendment on the ballot, null and void. The plaintiffs argued that the amendment's language concerning the extent of legislative power to alter ballot initiatives after voter approval was misleading. They also claimed that the amendment was drafted hastily, leaving voters insufficient time to comprehend the proposal.
Our founding fathers of the state said, if you want to change the Constitution, you got to give the citizens a couple months to think about it. And that can't be done under the circumstances of how late this occurred.
That was KSL legal analyst Greg Skordas, who added it would take a Supreme Court ruling to overturn the results. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. During today's Defense Department briefing, Major General Patrick Ryder comments on reports that North Korea appeared to fire a number of short-range missiles earlier this morning.
Well, this kind of nuclear saber rattling isn't new. It's very irresponsible. It's dangerous.
South Korea condemned this type of action as a violation of UN resolutions. Your money at this moment, a little bit of an uptick. The Dow has gained 235 points. The S&P is up 41 points. The NASDAQ has gained 174 points. Coming up, we'll take a look at the forecast. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
September means it's time for Any Hour Services free furnace sale. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and as summer comes to a close and falls right around the corner, the weather gets, well, perfect. And when the weather's perfect, people need a little extra incentive to replace their heating and cooling system. That's where Any Hour Services free furnace sale comes in. For the month of September, when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. And there's no catch. There's no raising the price on the air conditioner first. There's no making you buy the most expensive air conditioner to qualify. There's none of that. There's just a desire to keep our technicians working while the weather's mild and a genuine appreciation of you for helping us keep them busy. So if you've been thinking about replacing your old furnace and air conditioner and want to know exactly how much you can save during our free furnace sale, call Any Hour Services today and schedule a free estimate. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Bet you never thought about this before. Do you think you could survive as a family living month to month at poverty level? Well, could you? Community Action Services and Food Bank Circles Initiative presents the No Poverty Summit, September 19th from 9 to 4 at the Provo City Library. Participate in an immersive poverty simulation and discover how much it can change the way you think about poverty. You'll also hear from First Lady Abby Cox, former Utah State Senate President Wayne Niederhauser, Utah State House Representative Marcia Judkins, and Joanne Goldblum, author of Broken America and the founder of the National Diaper Bank Network and the Alliance for Period Supplies, about how how we can create better opportunities for people to obtain financial stability. Tickets are $15 and are available at casfb.org. Community Action Services and Food Bank's Circles Initiative actively assists those who need support to rebuild and transform their lives. Get tickets to the No Poverty Summit September 19th and learn more at casfb.org.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
In Davis County, we have a grass fire by the roadside on northbound I-15 at Parish Lane in Centerville. Fire crews are out of traffic on the right shoulder on the main flow of the freeway, but they are blocking the left lane on that side street that runs parallel to I-15. The BYU Department of Dance presents World of Dance, featuring BYU's finest ballroom, contemporary, ballet, Native American, and folk dance ensembles, September 19th and 20th at the Marriott Center. Tickets at byuonstage.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It's a beautiful day out there right now. We have gotten to our high of 68 degrees for the day, so it's a little bit of a cool fall day. Some more smoke is supposed to be rolling in later on this afternoon, but right now it looks sunny and clear. I'm Britt Johnson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we saw in recent years during the COVID pandemic, the tendency for government to overreach in times of emergency is a pretty ironclad rule these days. The question is, and what we need to think again about, is government declared emergencies? And is everything an emergency? And how long does an emergency last? Maybe it's time to think again about what we think we know about emergencies. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Jack Butler's a submissions editor at the National Review Online and has the perfect conversation around all of this. The emergency, that is one that we all need to be aware of. A lot of these things go under the headlines because we forget about them once we think the emergency is over. A lot of times the power and money doesn't quite stop. Jack, welcome to the show.
Hey, Boyd, thanks for having me.
To break that down for our listeners, in terms of some of these emergency powers or emergency declarations or emergency spending, kind of break that down with some examples in terms of how we're seeing that and the impact that ultimately has on all of us.
Yeah, sure. So the best and most recent example of this that people actually paid attention to was the COVID national emergency. Now, that ended up lasting for about 3 years from when it was initially declared in the Trump administration to when it ended in the Biden administration. That may seem like a long time. I mean, a lot of things changed in those 3 years, but by the standards of your typical emergency declaration, that thing was a baby. We got emergency declarations on the books from as early as the Carter administration. Some of them are closer to my age or will be turning 30 in the next few years here. And in my view, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of an emergency. That's a fixed, specific catastrophe that requires an immediate response. And if you have something lasting for several decades, that's not really an emergency. And what ends up happening if something lasts that long is it distorts the way our political process is supposed to work and ends up arrogating power that belongs to other parts of our government toward the president and toward the executive agencies.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved that you pointed out in your piece is that, as with so many things, Congress is both the problem, the cause, but they also hold the solution if they're willing to exert it. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so Congress is the problem because Congress drafted all of these bills that granted these emergency powers to the president and to the agencies. So that's where the power comes from. It's the Article 1 branch, after all. So because it's the Article 1 branch, that means Congress is the solution. Now, that's an easier said than done situation because one of the biggest trends of modern politics is that congressional members don't actually want to legislate. They just kind of want to be there, hang out, go on TV, and they don't want to take hard votes, and they don't want to do things that
make them, that in theory would even make them more powerful, but also, I mean, to quote another superhero property, with great power comes great responsibility. And sometimes responsibilities don't pull very well in people's districts. So that's how Congress is both the problem and the solution here.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's so easy for them to not want to deal with that responsibility part of the equation. And it's much easier to shrug your shoulders and say, well, that's an agency just, acting on an emergency declaration from a president. Or we also see this at the state levels as well. The states are equally guilty of having these emergencies that go on for a decade, which, again, is way past the definition of an emergency.
Right. Now, I should clarify, there are emergencies that require extraordinary government response.
Yes.
We can them very easily. Hurricanes, spills of toxic waste, even pandemics.
Yeah.
Have to define them narrowly, and it's important as quickly as possible to return to proper modes of governance. Otherwise, you end up succumbing to this temptation just to exist in an emergency state forever. And I think a lot of states during the COVID pandemic actually succumbed to this temptation.
Yeah, and so I think the key to all of that, as you point out, is, again, Congress has got to take that as quickly as possible. Again, emergencies do happen, they do exist, and that's why we have the system we have for just such a case. But it seems to me that this is becoming much more a way to get a few things done or keep a few things going without having to do that tedious task of negotiating or compromising or actually legislating.
That's right. And what we have now in recent years is this unfortunate temptation. It's gone beyond the presidential level and has kind of migrated into our politics as a whole, where now political activists are essentially demanding of the president that he use his emergency power to make something an emergency that doesn't really qualify as one. So, for example, after the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, a lot of pro-abortion activists wanted President Biden to declare a public health emergency. Now, abortion is a tremendously complicated issue. I have my own views on this. I'm pro-life. But if there's going to be a debate on this, it shouldn't happen. I mean, I should say, rather, it should happen. It shouldn't be this edict that comes down from above and then settles the abortion question once and for all without any deliberation, without any passage through the proper procedural deliberational channels of our government.
Yeah, it's so true. And so often we see this anytime that Congress either abdicates their authority or just stands by. The executive branch is always all too happy to grab that power, to use it by declaration, emergency declaration, executive order. But then once that happens, then someone files a lawsuit, and it works its way through the court, ends up at the Supreme Court. And that's why I think we have such a politicized Supreme Court. Is, again, back to your point, Jack, is that if Congress would just do their job, this would be very different, and it would actually increase the trust I think we have in each of the institutions of government. Go ahead.
I agree totally with that. And I think there are, in my surveying of this matter, there are some members of Congress who are interested in doing something about this. The one I talk about in my article is Chip Roy, representative from Texas. He, along with Mike Lee, Utah senator, several years ago, actually, before COVID and during the Trump administration, thus taking out of the picture, spurious accusations that they're doing this for X and Y reason. They did this of their own accord years ago while Trump was president. They introduced the Article 1 Act, which would, in Roy's words, shift the burden of emergency declaration from back to Congress. Essentially, the president gets a period to declare an emergency, but then to keep it going, he has to ask Congress for permission, essentially. And that just keeps things accountable and makes sure that we're actually in a legitimate emergency situation.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great thinking. Great writing. Jack Butler, submissions editor at the National Review Online. Jack, thanks for joining us today. Great stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great perspective there. Jack Butler, National Review. And it really comes down, you can go all the way back to the Incredibles movie series. If everyone's special, no one's special. If everything is an emergency, is anything really an emergency? And if Congress or if the executive branch are forever creating emergencies, And granted, there are some that are legitimate. Again, natural disaster, fire, flood, earthquake, attack on the country, those are legitimate emergencies. But the idea should always be to return things to normal as swiftly as possible. He cited the fact that we still have emergency things on the books from the Carter administration. And they keep going. I don't think that constitutes an emergency if you're still dealing with something in 2024 that started in the mid-1970s. The definition of emergency means now, immediate. But if we make everything immediate so that presidents of either political party can do vast things and spend billions of dollars with hardly any accountability on it, and then it just perpetuates, that's part of the problem. So emergency powers, fine, that's a good thing. But they should be limited, and they should always end up having to go back through Congress if they're going to be extended beyond what is a real emergency. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. 3 letters. BYU. BYU goes for win number 3.
3, that's a magic number.
BYU is on the road for Game 3.
It's the magic number.
Against the Pokes of Wyoming.
3 times 1.
BYU, Wyoming. Pregame starts Saturday at 5.
That's a magic number.
And kickoff is at 7 on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1932 $10 gold Indian coins have been found. These gorgeous 1932 gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you can own a piece of the hoard. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1932 dated gold coin featuring Lady Liberty with an Indian war headdress and a majestic eagle. With limited availability, you must call now. These 1932 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition with brilliant luster. That is 92 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-495-6468. Call now and you'll receive a free bonus over a $55 value free with every order. Call 1-800-495-6468 now to secure your 1932 $10 gold Indian coins before they sell out. Don't wait. You must act fast. Call now.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Dave and Debbie.
It's impossible to digest and consume all of the news that's now coming at us through either social media or through web pages or through the radio. Pick what is most impactful in your life and focus on that. And that's what Dave and I do every single morning. We pick those issues that are most important to our listeners and we boil it down so it's digestible. It's simple to understand.
I think we're trying to find the essence of the story. You know, you can't be an expert on all things, but that doesn't mean you can't be curious and really find out more and educate yourself and learn the complexities of an issue. But I think all of us start at ground zero on everything. Ask questions, show that curiosity.
And then if you need more research, you can always go to KSLNewsRadio.com and learn more.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Britt Johnson. First, a Utah district judge has declared Amendment D, the recent constitutional amendment on the ballot, null and void. Second, Major General Pat Ryder confirms they've been witnessing activity from Russian troops that confirms Ukraine's reports that a counteroffensive may be underway. Third, it's official, 4 schools have announced they will be leaving the Mountain West Conference to join the Pac-12. Right now it's 68 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson. In the midst of the heated debates on immigration, the stories of refugees often get lost in all the political polarization and rhetoric. As a refugee medical examiner, Naman Shah has witnessed firsthand the resilience, the hope, and most important to me, the potential that newcomers bring to our nation. I think often the journeys of refugees remind us of America's enduring promise as a beacon of freedom and a place of opportunity and hope. So at a time when immigration is a hot topic, it gives us a chance to ask ourselves how we can recreate better policy that can be more effective in welcoming those entering America as refugees. Again, Naman Shah is the Director of Medical and Dental Affairs at the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, a Paul and Daisy Soros Fellow, and a Public Voice Fellow at the Op-Ed Project. And Naman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic piece in The Hill today, talking about how we welcome refugees and how it actually makes us all winners. Give us a little bit of your experience of being a refugee medical examiner in Los Angeles County, and what have you learned in that process?
Yeah, thanks. You know, I've had the privilege of caring for refugees over the past 9 years, the last 2 years here in LA County. And it is, you know, these patients are incredible. I mean, I think the first thing to understand is that many people don't realize is that, you know, refugees do not cross over the border. This is a different process. It's a formal process. It's a beautiful process that involves a ton of partnerships, churches, volunteer groups, you know, clinics, the State Department, everyone. And they apply, they get background checked. They, you know, the merits of their case are reviewed, they get approved, and they come in and somebody picks them up from the airport, helps them find an apartment, helps their kids enroll in school, helps them with job prep, and they come to me for their medical exam. The medical exam serves 2 purposes. It's to make sure that while they find a local, you know, family doctor, they don't have any medical needs for which get lost and they get plugged into the right care. They have enough, they don't run out of their medications. And it also serves to protect us and their new communities from any imported infections, given that people are coming in from all over the world might be bringing in with them that may not be a parent. So we screen and treat those. Now, as a doctor, people tell me their stories, and I have met patients from all over the world, all walks of life, engineers, prosecutors, business people, professors, and all ages, families with children, people who are more elderly, and they are hardworking. They love this country and what it represents. They are grateful, and they are, within a few years, phenomenal Americans, phenomenal neighbors, phenomenal colleagues, phenomenal friends.
Love that. And it's one of those things here in the state of Utah that I think we do a pretty good job on in terms of welcoming refugees, making them part of communities. And I think part of that comes from a mindset of saying, hey, these refugees that are coming here, these are not liabilities to be managed. These are people, these are fellow travelers here on planet Earth, and they're great assets, and they make a difference. And because of that, I think it creates this environment to that upward mobility and getting them to become part of community. And they're so valuable in what they bring. What should we be thinking about in terms of policy? What should we be thinking about in terms of humanity as it relates to how we all ought to be approaching this across the country to make sure we're creating space for those refugees to, again, ultimately be great assets and a great benefit to our society?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks for sharing, what's happening in Utah. I'm not surprised. I think also, the communities of faith have been a really important part of this process. And I think a lot of communities and my understanding of Utah, where you have close-knit groups and a lot of active people in different social circles, that goes hand in hand with this attitude of caring for thy neighbor. For improving the process, I think there's a refugee cap that's set by the president each year in terms of how many refugee applications the United States can accept. Currently, we're at 125,000, which is really, tenfold higher almost compared to the previous administration, but still lower than even what we had during President Reagan in the 1980s.
Right.
And so I think a really simple move is to just increase the number of refugees coming through this incredible process, which sets everyone up for success, rather than having people, in desperation come through the border, for example, which doesn't benefit anyone. I think there's a couple of other things in terms of, I think there's a backlog of applications, and improving application processing times is really important. And then finally, there's a couple of special pathways. So if you already have family in the U.S. and therefore need less support and it'll be easier to integrate, there are some expedited program pathways, and I think these can be broadened.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of all of that, simplifying, streamlining some of those processes, making sure people are getting plugged in. And sometimes there's just that interesting dynamic in terms of plugging into the right government agency or to the right sector or whatever it may be. And sometimes you bump up against some kind of turf battles there in terms of who wants to be in charge of which things. And it's interesting, you mentioned kind of that intersection between government and business and faith organizations. Talk to us just a little bit in terms of why that matters and why we need to make sure we're not just giving all of this to a government agency to take care of, because ultimately it's going to require all of us if we're going to help them actually become part of community.
Yeah, and I think you're making the case well, which is, partnerships matter, and everybody has their area of expertise, and no one group is going to be an expert in everything, right? So, and moving to a new country, starting a new life, that's a huge, huge undertaking. It's not something that a lot of people are willing to do, actually. And the people who are doing this are really, doing it out of desperation, but have the wherewithal to go through that process, to take on that risk. And I think it end up being so successful. But it's a lot of different elements, right? It's education, it's health, it's jobs and income, it's housing. So it takes that level of partnership. A lot of the community-based organizations, the faith-based organizations, they're incredibly local. They are rooted. They have relationships. And not everything works well through rules. Some things just have to come through the heart. And that's why I think, voluntary agencies, church groups and nonprofits, they just do a much better job of that. And so, and take care of the things that might not have been on anybody's radar, but also given the diversity in people coming through, their circumstances and where they're ending up, you can't have a plan and a protocol and a rule for everything. And so you need people who bring that spirit to the work.
Yeah, and so important. This education process, I think, is also important, especially in a fractured political season. It's easy for this to just become one more political football or one more wedge issue for political campaigns. And thank you for leading us through that conversation. And again, we have a lady in a harbor with a lamp for a reason. And we understand what it means to be refugees in this country. And we should be welcoming them because they do make such a difference. They add so much richness and value and power to our communities, and making sure that process is right and good and can do the things that will help us all move forward. Arms linked together is really where it begins. Naman Shah, Director of Medical and Dental Affairs at the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. Great piece in The Hill. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You can see Naman Shah's piece in The Hill. Check it out at thehill.com. And just some really great perspective there. It is something I think we do well here in the state of Utah. I'm sure we can do it even better. And so let's figure that out. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Britt Johnson. KSL's top story this hour, a road rage incident in Taylorsville this morning started with an argument and ended with a gunshot. Sergeant Bennett Credston with Taylorsville City Police says they got a call around 8 a.m. from one of the drivers explaining the situation.
There were some discrepancies of what was going on. They got into a verbal altercation, and then again, the one driver produced a handgun, shot at the other driver.
Credston says no one was hurt and the investigation is ongoing, but there is no active danger to the public. If found, the suspect could face stiffer punishments due to a law that went into effect earlier this year that can increase the severity of a charge if road rage is found to be the cause. The Sundance Institute just announced the final 3 cities competing to host its film festival in future years. KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly reports the hopes of keeping the festival here in Utah are still alive.
A joint statement from the Park City and the Salt Lake City and County mayors says they are eager to elevate the Sundance Festival experience by providing extensive infrastructure and warm hospitality. A press release from Sundance states infrastructure is one of the key factors they are judging to pick which city will host the festival starting in 2027.
Boulder, Colorado, and Cincinnati, Ohio are the other 2 finalists. Your money at this moment, things are in the green. The Dow up 235 points. The S&P gained 41 points, and the NASDAQ is up 174 points. Coming up, we'll see if this smoke will stay or go. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
September has come and fall is here. Make this new season the time when those extra pounds and inches fall off of you. Soda Weight Loss will assist you without drugs or injections, without side effects, or with the return of those pounds once you stop taking those medications. My fall season with Soda included 37 pounds falling away in 90 days. I'm over 2.5 years into the journey, 37 pounds down, never felt better. The results don't lie. The difference will surprise and amaze you. It falls off so easy. Let Soda Weight Loss and their dietitians and coaches help you get ready for the winter holidays by using the fall season to get the pounds and inches to fall off of you for a better, healthier version of you. As I always say when it comes to your Soda Weight Loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning today. Start a healthy tomorrow today. Make the decision that will change every day for the rest of your life with Soda Weight Loss. SOTA stands for state of the art. You can find it at sotaweightloss.com.
Transform your old, outdated kitchen with Half Price Granite. For a limited time, Half Price Granite is offering special pricing starting at $25 per square foot installed. That's lower than most big box stores. These prices are some of the lowest around. Granite, quartz, marble, and quartzite, all starting at $25 per square foot installed. Call 801-486-1700 or visit halfpricegranite.com. Half Price Granite, affordable luxury.
Hey, pet parents. With Progressive's collision coverage, you get extra protection for your cat or dog, because there's nothing worse than seeing your pet hurt. Like when you see their face after accidentally stepping on their tail, and you say, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Pickles." But as you kiss his nose and rub his little belly welly, you know Mr. Pickles is thinking, "You betrayed me." Anywho, Progressive pays up to $1,000 in vet bills if your pet is injured in an auto accident. Learn more at Progressive.com and watch where you step. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Collision coverage subject to policy terms. Not available in all states.
What was that?
That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm? I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business calm at ooma.com/radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, we do have emergency crews that have doused a fire, a roadside fire in Davis County, northbound on I-15 by Parish Lane. All lanes of travel are open. And so far, looking at kind of a quiet commute on all the Valley freeways, including I-15, both directions between Ogden and Provo. The Utah RV Super Show is back September 12th through 15th at Mountain America Expo Center. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
A high of just 68 degrees today with sunny skies. The smoky air will move back in a little later this afternoon and evening. Those are coming from Washington and Oregon fires, but it'll start to ease up as we move toward the weekend, and we should get back into the 80s as well. Right now it's 68 degrees and sunny. I'm Britt Johnson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
More and more, parenthood is being portrayed as a challenging, stressful, lonely kind of endeavor, which part of it is true. Parenting is not for wimps. But we have to really make sure that we get an accurate reflection of the whole picture, not just some of the parts. The recent advisory on parental stress by Surgeon General Vivek Murthy has sparked a debate about the true nature of raising children in today's world. And while you have to acknowledge the difficulties, the stress, the anxiety, the expectation, there's also a whole host of benefits that come to the world and come into people's lives that we just can't overlook. It's time to think again about what we're hearing when it comes to parenthood. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program Wendy Wang, Director of Research at the Institute for Family Studies, has a fantastic piece at Deseret.com with her tag team partner Brad Wilcox, and also Elise Elhage is part of that three-part series there. And Wendy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So give us a little bit of the numbers in terms of, one, what did the Surgeon General's report say, and kind of the top line, which a lot of people have kind of locked into as this dour representation of being a parent.
Yes. So, like you said, the report really paints the parenthood as very stressful job. 33% of parents say they're stressed most of the days. Only 20% of non-parents say that they're stressed. So parents are more stressed, and the parents need help. I think that's what the Surgeon General's advisory mainly talk about. However, like what you just said earlier, this is only a partial picture. Because if we look at parenthood in general, we see that parents are actually a lot happier and less lonely and then the non-parents. Again, we're looking at overall picture here. We're not talking about, certain groups of parents, like single parents or young parents. And so some groups of parents are definitely more stressful. And also at a different stage of parenthood, you also have different stress. But, that doesn't deny the fact that overall parenthood is really good for us.
Yeah, I want to dig into that. Before I go down that path, I want to go back to one thing that you pointed out in your piece at Deseret.com that I thought was important in the Surgeon General's report. It didn't get a lot of attention or headlines, and that is that Surgeon General Murthy rightly recognized the sacred work of parenthood and acknowledged just how crucial it is to society. And I thought it was important that he made that positive connection. What are some of the other positive connecting points that we should be looking at as a whole when it comes to parenting?
Absolutely. Not only the parenting is good for parents themselves, and also we know as a society we're facing a fertility crisis now. So the U.S. fertility rate is right now at 1.6 children per woman, and the replacement rate is 2.1. So, it's thinking about this as a society, if, we need children as the, future labor force and just, and future workers and consumers, we need people. So I think that's a bigger picture here. But also, as I mentioned, I did a piece earlier at Deseret talking about motherhood. There's a lot of bad talk about motherhood, mothers are stressed and, all these. It's true. I mean, I myself is a mother, and I, understand all the challenges that parents are facing, especially working parents. But on the other hand, parenthood brings you a lot of joy and meaning. That's the big part in the story, because the meaning and purpose that being a parent has, and definitely is a driver for your life. So the drive for not having a better life for yourself, but also for your children. This is very important. And also, like the research I did earlier on shows that, if you ask women, mothers and non-mothers, and, 56% of mothers say that their life is meaningful most or all of the time, but only 38% of women who don't have children say so. So that's just the numbers to back up what we're talking about.
Yeah, the numbers are really interesting to me. And as you pointed out, sometimes we kind of create this catastrophizing about family life, that if we suddenly make everything about parenting negative and horrible, that it's exhausting and thankless, and you kind of cherry pick all the numbers, it's easy to kind of double down on some of the problems there, which I don't think causes a lot of people to want to lean in to families and parenting. But you also pointed out some of the other numbers that I thought were interesting in terms of parents in general, that 80% of parents describe being a parent as enjoyable and rewarding. That seems to me that's an area that we don't talk nearly enough about.
Yeah, absolutely. The positive side of the parenthood needs to be mentioned because, as you said, that, we are already at the time that a lot of young adults are hesitant to have children because, there's a lot of factors, and children are expensive, childcare and all these things. Only, now, if we're talking about the stress, all the, negative part about parenthood, it really are, what kind of message we're sending to the young adults. And the thing is, there are the positive sides about parenthood outweigh the negative side of the parenthood. I mean, that's a bigger picture. For example, the Surgeon General's advisory says that parents are more lonely than non-parents, which is not true. Because, we can say the parents are more stressed, possibly, at some times, but parents are definitely not lonely, as lonely as the non-parents. And as we have found out that, a majority of the childless adults in the survey say that they're lonely most or some or most of the time. It's about 60%, but only 45% of parents say the same.
Yeah. And so finally, give us a sense in terms of some of the things that can help us, one, understand parenting, so we're, painting the right picture in terms of what it is and what it is not, but also how do we create that environment where there is that support, or there are the things that really nurture and support families and parents in particular?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in this piece, we also look at the group of parents who are doing a better job and, have better mental health. And these groups are married parents and parents who are religious and conservative. So if you look at these three groups of parents, and there's something in common about them, married parents are also more likely, to hold on. So basically, married parents have a partner to help with them to shoulder this workload of, all these financial, mental, emotional workload for raising children. And so they are happier than single parents, and they're less stressful than single parents. And the religious parents, this goes back to your question, is how do we support parents? So I see like the religious teaching and the community definitely are doing a great job helping parents because, there are teachings about children are blessings and in your life. And also, we need, parenting is about sacrifices as well. And parenthood itself is sacred responsibility. Yeah. So these are definitely great things and that could provide support for parents.
Yeah, and ultimately that leads to what we do in our communities. It also gives us a good chance to look at what is good public policy and ultimately making sure we're creating the right environment for everyone to really flourish and thrive. Wendy Wang, Director of Research at the Institute for Family Studies. Great piece at Deseret.com. And Wendy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Wendy Wang joining us. And again, the piece is The Surgeon General's Dour Picture of Parenthood Misses the Mark. You can check that out at Deseret.com. We'll step aside for one last break. More Inside Sources coming up next. We'll be right back.
Are you within 5 years of filing for Social Security? Get this. 96% of Americans forfeit an average of $111,000 in Social Security income. And it's all because they filed for their benefits at the wrong time. Learn how you could avoid this with a free, customized Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions, 5-time winners of the Best of State Award. If you've saved more than $200,000 for retirement and have not filed for Social Security, schedule your free analysis now by calling 801-896-9622. For some people, filing for Social Security early could result in more net income in retirement. Discover how you could get the most income from Social Security. Call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
It's hard to believe that Dee and I have now been living in our new house for about 9 years now. The thing that has really surprised me is how many appliances we have had to have work on and even replace. The one that we haven't replaced, haven't done any work on at all, have not had a minute's trouble with, it's the Connecticut soft water system. And it's so interesting because when we were building the home, the builder said, okay, well, what do you want for a water softener? And I just interrupted. I said, wait, we're going to go with Connecticut. And they just smiled at me like, yeah, we know about Connecticut. Never once have we had an issue with our Connecticut soft water system, not only in our new home, but in our previous home as well. It just sits there in the basement, does its job, does it so much more efficiently than any other soft water system out there on the market today. Why don't you give them a call, 801-576-8600, or go to softwaterutah.com.
When you switch and save with Progressive, you could use that money towards going to see your favorite team in the playoffs. Progressive cannot guarantee that you can go see your favorite team in the playoffs. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds on average, but we cannot guarantee that your favorite team will make the playoffs or even finish with a winning record. They could easily lose more than half their games and finish in the cellar because they stink badly and haven't made the playoffs in years. Savings? Very possible. Playoffs? Highly doubtful. Switch and see if you could save at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance and Affiliates. Not available in all states. We cannot be held liable for your favorite team's terrible and frankly embarrassing performances now or ever.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up! And call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single line 1, 5, and 10 gig data plans with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plans offered by T-Mobile and Verizon January 2024.
Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
My wife and I always loved doing everything together. Jiu-jitsu, kayaking, and intimacy was always on point. It was around my early 30s when I noticed a downward trend. Watching a lot of TV, putting on weight, and just full of self-doubt. I had tried another men's clinic with disappointing results. It's the personalized treatment I receive at Revive Men's Health that has been the complete game changer for me. I've got my energy and motivation back, I'm feeling stronger than I did in my 20s, and it made me a much better husband to my wife.
I'm Eric Ramos, healthcare provider at Revive Men's Health. If you are always feeling tired or moody, have a difficult time sleeping, or decreased libido, you may be suffering from low testosterone.
Book your free T-check and exam at Revive Men's Health, Salt Lake City. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Britt Johnson. First, the Sundance Institute just announced Park City is in the final 3 cities competing to host its film festival in future years. Second, a road rage incident in Taylorsville this morning started with an argument and ended with a gunshot. Luckily, no one was hurt. Third, tonight you can share your questions, concerns, or ideas about what's going to happen to Smith's Ballpark with Salt Lake City leaders. Right now it's 68 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, we're going to stay with a question in the conversation from our last guest. We talked about the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, doing his report about the fact that parenting is stressful. And it was a pretty dour look at what parenting is. But there were a lot of things that were missed. And in the last segment with Wendy Wang, we went through that in terms of some of the things that are actually very positive about parenting. Not to say that parenting is not for wimps. Single parenting is very difficult. There's lots of stressors there for sure. And there are a host of upside benefits to those that are parents in terms of their mental health and the benefits that come on the backside of that. So I want to stay with that part of the conversation because especially during an election year, you've got countless organizations, you've got politicians, government agencies, they're all shouting that we need to run away from, the plagues of poverty and drug addiction and crime and unemployment and violence in our neighborhoods. And unfortunately, a lot of these same individuals and groups are also running people away from family. The most obvious and the most historically proven solution to those problems. Not that there aren't problems in families. Families are messy, for sure. But they're also the solution to most problems. And so we have policies that penalize married couples through the tax code, or we limit parental choice in education. Those are just small things. It's kind of stunning to me that sometimes in the field of entertainment and the intellectual elite, they're the ones who often make the loudest calls for improvement in our inner cities and in struggling communities. But they also spend an equal amount of time undermining the sovereignty and strength of American families. Technology, affluence, and a solve every problem from a big government kind of approach have lulled a lot of us into believing that we can outsource the power and influence of family to other entities or other institutions. And I'm telling you, that kind of mindset, it atrophies the muscles that is at the heart and soul of American society. It's been the bedrock of successful civilizations for millennia. Family, not government, actually holds the keys to solving our nation's most pressing problems. Government functioning as family is a failed proposition. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Research shows that children from single-parent homes are twice as likely to be arrested, 3 times as likely to go to jail before age 30 compared to children from married families. Best way to reduce our burgeoning prison population? Not through a government action, but through strengthening family and community. And often it is community because, as I said, families are messy and there are problems in families. And when we have strong neighborhoods and communities that support each other and support the children, the family, it makes all the difference. What I'm cautioning is that the more we look to government-centric solution, the more we undercut or undervalue and underutilize the family. Now, to be clear, the government has a role to play, absolutely, 100%. But government should play a minor role and should never become the leading actor, the writer and director in the lives of our citizens, especially those who are struggling. The government can't love, it doesn't have the ability to nurture or to better our natures. it can never supplant the power of family. And it is true and it is obvious strong families are a driving force for good. I see it every day. If you want to improve education, cut crime, reduce poverty, solve a lot of our nation's biggest problems, we also ought to be thinking about how do we strengthen family? And not just our own families, the families in our communities. We can work to pave the way for economic prosperity. We can grow the private sector. We can improve the lives and futures for children across the country. It's not a political issue. When we strengthen one, we strengthen another. That's the power of family. Society's long recognized family as a critical social engine. And the research increasingly illustrates that the family is likewise a powerful economic engine. We often don't think of it as an economic engine, but it is. And so the goal of public policy at every level of government, from local to federal, should be to make government's influence smaller while fostering a society with bigger citizens, stronger families, more heroic communities. And while there are a whole lot of ills in our society that we should rightly run away from, there's one thing we probably ought to be running towards as a solution. And that's the power of a powerful, resilient, and prosperous family. And so as we look at where we go and we look at what we're likely to hear in the coming weeks in elections and candidates up and down the ballot, from the local to the state to the federal level, you'll hear a lot of programs coming at you that will make society better. Well, nothing makes society better than strengthening individuals and strengthening them in families, neighborhoods, and communities. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM